Hey guys, welcome back. Say you got something like this for $500, right? Versus my V-Strom back there, which would be a bit more expensive. Well, quite a bit more expensive. And the issue with these bikes are, if you bought a bike for, right now in Australia, you can't buy a bike for $500 unless the motor's blown and it's got two flat tires and basically you're buying a heap of junk because the bike prices, second-hand bike prices have gone through the roof. But say this bike you got for realistically, you can buy bikes for around $1,500, $1,000, $1,500, even some of them with blown motors. The problem with that is, which I found with this one costs double that, right? Bought it a couple of years ago, is that you have to do the wrenching yourself. You're not going to get you're just not going to get an immaculate bike for that money. You're probably going to get a bike that's thrashed and they just selling it for parts prices. So basically you would be buying it as a parts bike. So what inspired this video was a comment that someone said on my V-Strom video, is that a great first bike? And I still believe it is. But his point was, no, buy a $500 bike that you won't mind dropping, that you won't mind scratching, versus something that if you drop a V-Strom or you do any damage to it, the parts are not cheap, right? And he's right in that respect. I totally agree with him in that respect. My only issue is, where do you draw the line? Like, do you want to spend your time wrenching on the bike and learning about the bike, which is kind of what I'm doing with this. I've spent more time looking at this bike than I've spent riding it, right? And I'm probably spending more time wrenching it than I have done riding it, even though I did ride it every day for a while. But I think what my point is, you're better off investing the money in a better second-hand bike that you don't have to wrench on as much, that has decent service intervals and learning your skill sets. So, but something that you're not going to mind dropping, okay? So there is a balance with that. It doesn't have to be cheap and cheerful rubbish. Now in the States, if you can buy a $500 bike and it's pretty decent, more power to you. In Australia, you definitely can't. 500 Australian dollars will buy you a frame with handlebars, you know, maybe you'll get, it just won't buy you much. Those days are gone in Australia, unfortunately. But in the States, if you can get $500 bikes that are half decent, good luck to you. Now, me personally, after having both, so I guess this would be a $500 bike in the States, and my V-Strom would be like a couple of grand, maybe $2-3 grand, I'm not sure. I would pick the V-Strom, right? Because I had a certain level of skill. I'm not going to test myself past that skill level in a hurry. I have dropped that bike. It had crash bars on it and it was fine. I think where you get into trouble is if you really want to test yourself far past your skill level, you're going to have issues with higher speed drops, or you know, everyone has the car park drop, or the standing still drop till you learn to balance. But yeah, I just don't feel that you're going to enjoy riding if wrenching's not your thing, if you have to keep working on your bike and your bike is at the shop more than it's at home. So, and when I say at home, I mean with you being able to ride it. So, this is. So I'm going to take off this bash plate on the WR because A, I don't like it, and USB. I don't need it at the moment. But there is a merit. So there is a merit to that way of thinking of getting the cheaper bike, right? Because back in my day, when I was a lad, right, you did get what we called a bomb. Why this wasn't turning? It is a long ass bolt. You did get yourself a bomb, or we called them in Australia bush bashers, as your first car. It had rust holes in it. It was dented up. You didn't care if you dinged it. And when you were done with it, you sold it for peanuts, or you sold it for what you bought it for because you bought it cheap, right? Very few kids today are doing that. And the kids that are doing that I've seen, they're YouTube superstars. We weren't famous for working on our own cars, but these kids are. So, yeah, I get what this guy was saying. I get what my subscriber was saying. He was like, get something you can drop. You don't have to pay a fortune. But there's two reasons that you would want to buy a bike like the V-Strom, or something that's cost you $2 or $3 grand. It's reliable, it's comfortable, you're going to ride it a lot longer, you're going to ride it more often, and you're going to feel safer on it. And that's important, yeah? What's the point in having something that you don't feel safe on? But also, most people starting out, young people, so this is not my crowd, this is not the middle-aged crowd, this is the young people. And I think this is what he was talking to. He was talking about young people, because he was looking back at the day where he bought his first bike, or talking about his kids or whatever. Yeah, for a young person, they might not have the money and they're going to drop their bike, but they also don't have a credit rating. So they're getting something for $2 or $3 grand is going to work on building their credit score, as long as they pay it off, as long as they have a job and can pay it off, or they have the means to pay it off. So that makes sense, right? But if you're a middle-aged guy getting into biking, unless you're a bit like me, who actually still likes turning a wrench every now and then, it doesn't make sense to do this. Because if you're going to take this bike, and I've said it in my other videos, I've already had a $2 grand bill for this bike, which is ridiculous, because the bike's not worth much more than that. So it doesn't make sense for a middle-aged man. So when I made that video, it's kind of like from the perspective of someone a bit older, getting their license. Definitely not the midlife crisis guy, which is in my other video, but just someone who's getting their license, wants to get into riding, and they don't want to do too much wrenching on it. They're not going to do ridiculous stuff on it. They might have a car park drop here and there, but they're going to ride pretty conservatively, because they're a bit more mature. Why wouldn't you buy a V-Strom? Why wouldn't you buy a more decent bike? Now, I think there's a scale which you need to use common sense, because I know guys that have literally got their license back when, if you were over a certain age, you pretty much nearly went to your full license. You didn't have to do your time, and they've gone out, got their full license, and spent a fortune on a bike. Like back in the day, it's like 15 grand. So 20 years ago, 15 grand was a lot for a bike. Nowadays, you don't get much for that brand new. And dropped it, and had like buyer's remorse because they didn't ride it as much as they thought they were going to ride. I get that. There has to be a scale. So personally, I would not buy a $500 bike unless you're going to learn how to wrench on it, unless you're going to maybe buy something that's a bit trash, learn how to fix it up, and after that you might sell it, learn your craft a bit and then sell it for what you paid for it. Sure, I get that, but not many people will do that these days, and particularly not many young people. They just don't want to, can't be bothered, they don't have the patience. They'll watch someone wrench on a bike on YouTube for hours, but doing it themselves, most of them don't have the patience. And this is not bashing young people, because I think they're awesome. I love working with young people, but yeah, it's not their fault. They don't have the attention span. They're not built into that world. It's not the world of patience and waiting for things. It's the world of instant gratification, and it's entirely not their fault. You know what I mean? You can blame them all you want, but they were born into it. It's the people cashing in on it that you want to blame. And you're watching me because of the people cashing in on it, right? People want to be YouTube famous. So in conclusion, long story short, buy what you want to buy, ride what you want to ride, but if you're my age and you're getting into riding, my personal opinion is to get something like that you're going to be happy with for 2 or 3 years. Something like this, you're not going to be happy with, and you're not going to push yourself past your limits like someone that's in their teens or in their 20s, right? You might drop, well, it depends how mature you are, mentally mature, but you're going to drop that bike, something like that, put crash bars on it. Buy a bike with knobs or crash bars on it. If sports bike your things, get the knobs, or cruisers a thing, get the crash bars, and just take it easy. It's simple. The bike will last you for a while. I know people that have jumped on one of these, not this particular one, because this one's the full power one, but they've jumped on the Lambs approved ones and ridden it for like 5 years. They didn't know any difference. So that's my own personal opinion. I'd love to hear what your opinion is. So let me know what you think, guys. Drop a comment. Let me know if you agree with me, or tell me your personal opinion, your personal experience. This is purely what I'd recommend to my friends who are getting into biking at my age. It's different for everybody, and at the end of the day, you got to ride what you want to ride. So thanks for watching. I want to thank all my subscribers, all the guys that regularly comment on my videos. It's much appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, think about subscribing. Give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Ride safe.